It was a year ago today, word started to spread about tens of thousands of pounds of toxic coal ash leaking into the Dan River near Eden in Rockingham County from a storage facility belonging to Duke Energy.
And Bob Buckley is here with an update on where the cleanup stands now and whether the Dan River has actually recovered.
Hard to believe it's been a year.
Yeah, and this was one of the worst environmental disasters in North Carolina history. And when that involves drinking water, it can provoke a visceral reaction from anyone affected by it. Well, what we've learned in following this story over the last year is that Duke Energy has put in a lot of work, and the environment has ways of healing itself that we don't always see.
Coal ash spill. Coal ash.
Coal ash.
Coal ash. The disaster.
It didn't have to happen.
Something was very much amiss.
Major cleanup.
I don't think they can get all of it.
In the land of Eden.
Now live
in Eden.
Live in Danville.
It was the story that lined the newscasts, like the ash that lined the river.
February 2nd was a tough day for the communities along the Dan River.
That was 2014.
Good morning, everyone.
By February of this year,
It's very hard and very humbling to stand before you.
Duke Energy executives returned to the place on the river where their equipment has been working since the coal ash spill
We are here for the long run.
to declare that the areas around Eden are almost like a garden once again.
We have a lot of indicators that we can see today that tell us that the river is doing well, that the aquatic life is thriving.
Not Duke Energy telling you this. This is what the science is saying.
I think that we have enough data now to make somewhat of a determination that the river doesn't pose any ecological threats any longer.
Kenneth Rame is with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. So you saying we couldn't find any coal ash?
Not in the samples that we've analyzed in the last two quarterly sampling events.
The EPA isn't the only one sampling.
We've been on the river since the day it happened.
Brian Williams is with the Dan River Basin Association.
You see some coal ash?
He's been taking his own samples.
To say the river is back to pre-spill conditions is inaccurate. There's still tons and tons of coal ash in this river.
No human risk.
With the EPA saying that the level of toxic metals from the ash are low enough to not be considered a threat.
There's a lot of unknowns at this point. One more bag, Dane.
Biology professor Dane Kuppinger and his students are taking the samples back to Salem College, where they can do the hard work of separating not just the metals from the sediment,
We want to look for levels of chromium in the soil.
but the science from the emotion.
There's always an emotional response anytime you hear that what is considered a toxin was dumped into a water system.
Set it for 1 milliliter.
One of the things that we try to really discuss with our students is separating the science from the advocacy.
It's not just coal ash anymore, right? It's coal ash mixed with sediment.
The professors and students at Salem College are looking to see how much toxic metal is in that sediment and studying what it is doing to the organisms living in and around it.
We may not have the heavy metals there any longer, but the impact of how that short exposure did have, some change on the ecosystem, we may still be dealing with the repercussions of that for decades.
Our kids are going to be dealing with it for a long time.
It's not a pristine river, but it's a one that's recovering. And if we can keep future spills out, I think it'll continue to recover.
With the EPA saying that it appears the metals have been diluted to levels that are not considered toxic, the Dan River is open for business once again. And because of the quality of municipal water treatment plants, the drinking water has been safe really almost from the beginning.
And Bob, at the end of your story, we heard the professor say if we can keep future spills out. So what is Duke Energy doing on that front?
Well, two things. First, they're studying all their existing ash plants to make sure that there's not going to be a type of breakdown we saw in this case to leak things out. And from here on out, with ash they make from this point on, they're going to store that in what they call a dry storage facility, which means that it won't have a chance to leak into a waterway or someone's well.
And they're not burning coal at the Dan River facility.
Right.
That's all changed over to natural
But
gas.
they have, I believe, 32 sites where they've got ash stored around the
yeah.
state, and that's a lot of ash. They burn less coal than they did years ago, but still there's more. But from here on out, it's going to be stored entirely differently.
It's a big issue we're going to be following for a while, Bob. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, could this be